Hey, so I've made similar videos to this before, but um, I think it's an important message to get out there because I do concede that I am in a minority with this sort of view, or at least if other people think it, then it's drowned out by the very thing that which I'm critiquing. What I'm talking about is in the sport of boxing, a certain attitude from fans regarding how they actually perceive, for want of a better term, how far a fighter should go, for want of a better way to describe that. I'm trying to think of the right vocabulary here because I'm making this video somewhat spontaneously. I've just watched the Victor Ortiz Marcos Maidana fight from 2009 on YouTube, and that fight was somewhat controversial because Ortiz quit in the, I believe it was the 5th round. I'll just double check that to be sure. Yeah, it was 6th round. 6th round. And actually it was ruled a total knockout, but he could no longer continue in the 6th round. Now, inevitably, there were a lot of comments under that which were very disrespectful. A bit of context: Ortiz had badly swollen eye, had a cut, and he looked like there was something wrong with him badly. Later on in another fight with Josecito Lopez, he suffered a broken jaw, and again there was controversy following that. One thing I frequently heard from fans is that Victor Ortiz has no heart. Now, if you're not a boxing fan, if you don't follow the sport, that sounds like a strange thing to say. What it basically means, heart in the context of boxing, is how much, I guess you would say, motivation a boxer has to get up again after being beaten, or if he or she's been worn down, how much they can just keep going forward and not care. That's basically what it means. I guess it goes into the philosophy of no pain, no gain. But I have to say, there's a side to this that really makes me uncomfortable, and I'm saying that as a boxing fan. You know, I'm not just... people might think I make a lot of boxing videos and there's negative overtones to them, so they might think I'm only pretending to be a boxing fan. I'm a boxing fan. Look, I buy these magazines. They're not very cheap. I wouldn't buy those if I wasn't a fan. The point I'm making is I am a fan, and there's a lot of things I like about this sport. There's a lot of things that compel me to the sport, but there's areas I don't like. I'm going to have my first fight, personally I'm going to have my first fight on October the 12th. Now, that's a white collar event. It's amateur boxing. It's not comparable to these sort of guys, you know. It's not professional boxing. It's going to be a 3-round fight. It's my first fight ever, so of course I'm somewhat anxious. I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm trying to improve my skills, my defense, and so on. But I also see it as a good opportunity for me. So it's a combination of being anxious but also looking forward to it. Anyway, I know what I'm preparing myself for. I know the sort of training that I'm going through, and this is just amateur level. You know, I'm not famous. I'm not a well-known person in the sporting world. In fact, I'm nobody really in boxing. I'm just another guy who's taking on an amateur fight. But in my own life, it is a big deal. Now, when I look at professional boxers, I've got nothing but profound respect for what those guys go through, because I know that they're in a completely different level from what I'm doing. Now, granted, I'm 29 years old and this is my first fight, so I'm starting very, very late. These guys, most of them are in it from when they're kids, basically. So there is obviously that different dimension. But the reason I'm mentioning myself is that I know how I'm feeling, so I can only guess what a professional boxer feels like before he or she goes into a big title fight. So when I see disrespect, it just makes me, to put it bluntly, it makes my blood boil. And by disrespect, I'm not talking about passionate disagreement or debate about a fighter's skill. That I've no problem with. Boxing is a competitive sport. It would be a bit boring if everyone just agreed. So of course you need debate, of course you have opinions. But I think there's certain opinions out there, and they're very widespread, that are just a bit sad really. That people can be so desensitized that they cannot sort of reflect on the comments and reflect on how utterly classless those sort of comments are. I mean, regarding the Josecito Lopez fight, I haven't watched that tonight, but I recall that fight. It wasn't like Ortiz quit in the first round or something. And when he had suffered a broken jaw, he obviously seriously feared for his lifelong health. Now, there's an issue in this, and that is really how far should boxers go. Like I say, this is a tough sport, probably the toughest of sports, and every person that enters that ring knows the risks involved. I mean, if they didn't, they'd be pretty stupid to get involved in it in the first place. I'm doing this in October, and even at this level it can be dangerous. A guy died earlier this year doing white collar boxing. That's at the back of my mind. So I know the risks involved, but I'm doing it. When a guy like Victor Ortiz goes into the ring, he knows the risks involved. So to do something in life whereby you know that risk is involved, that by definition takes courage. And I'm talking about professional boxers here. It's I mean, anyone that says it doesn't is just stupid. Of course it takes courage. I think what happens is some fans get so entrenched in the sport that they become utterly desensitized, and I do think that is a problem. It's one thing being a passionate fan, but you have to also reflect on how you're letting your passion come across, because I don't think it's particularly cool or loyal or insightful to just be downright disrespectful. I'm going to give you some quotations here from some of the comments that I've been seeing, and I use Victor Ortiz as just one example. Many other fighters have had to have this sort of language said about them. Even Floyd Mayweather has had it said about him. He's the best fighter in the world. Here's one from La La Man. Victor Ortiz sucks. He should fight Amir Khan. Two sorry ass fighters with no chins. Trying to find some others. Ortiz is just not built mentally to be a fighter. I think Maidana took a piece of his heart ever since they fought and made him quit. Now he has no heart. Ortiz is a real bum. He needs his head checked. Idiot, I would knock him out with my penis. Etc, etc, etc. So this is the sort of thing I see all the time on boxing videos. And it just really bothers me. I mean, what it comes down to, and I know I've made this point in other videos, but what it comes down to is, if you're a fan and you pay money to see a title fight, a big title fight, of course you're entitled to want an action-packed night and a good fight. And fighters get paid a lot of money at that level, so of course they should give their all. But nobody knows how they are feeling better than an individual. So if a fighter genuinely believes he's going to have a lifelong disability or potentially even face death, because with certain injury he feels it, then I believe it's common sense to quit, not cowardice. You can say that, but I think if you believe that a man should continue fighting, even with a very real chance that he'll be permanently disabled, then I would argue that you're sadistic. I've made this point in the Froch Groves controversy, the first Froch Groves fight. I've made this point in the Andrew Golota Mike Tyson fight. I've made this point in other fights that have had this sort of controversy when a fighter has quit. Now granted, in the Golota fight, you can't really expect the fans to have known what was going on there, but it's still very ugly what happened. And I would make this point: people who make this a career it would be completely out of character to quit out of fear, because every fighter goes into a ring with fear. So the idea that they would quit because they're frightened is rubbish. The idea that they're frightened of the other man, I don't think it's fear of that, it's fear of being permanently disabled. And that is a completely human fear. So if you think a man should continue to fight under those circumstances, then I would say, why don't you get a time machine and go back to ancient Rome and watch gladiators kill each other? Because really, your attitude is no less sadistic. I mean, I've heard people counter-argue, oh well, they know the risks they're getting into, they're being paid to do it, they're professional boxers. Like I say, it is a tough sport, they do know what they're getting into, and every fighter should give their all. And they should try to give the fans their money's worth, of course they should. You know, I appreciate that fans pay a lot of money, and if I was a fan and I'd pay money, of course I want to see an action-packed fight. I'd be disappointed if it ended in the first or second round. But people become so desensitized they forget that actually it's a human being in there. You know, we're not watching Transformers or robots here, we're watching two men. Two guys who are much tougher than the average man, but in the end of the day, still human beings. And if you want to see someone fight until they're in a stretcher, or they die in the ring, then you're basically a sadist. I mean, I really have a problem with that sort of mentality, and it's not that Victor Ortiz is going to be losing much sleep over those comments. You know, far from having no heart, look at how the guy responds to his losses. I mean, he laughs, he doesn't make any excuses. I'd say he's handling it like a professional. Now, he probably should quit. I'm not disputing that. He probably is at a point now where he doesn't have the skill he once had. He probably should quit. But the idea that he has no heart, that's just a lot of crap. I mean, you're talking about a man who had his jaw broken in the Josecito Lopez fight, but still got back into the ring to fight Luis Collazo. Now, to argue that he has no heart, it's just a lot of bullshit. It's the same with Andrew Golota. After that Tyson fight, most human beings would have never entered a ring again. Golota did, and he fought for years after that. So, I really wish that more fans would just have a bit more humanity, frankly. Boxing's a tough sport, but you don't have, there's nothing cool about wanting a man to die, or trying to make excuses for someone fighting in those circumstances. I mean, look at Gerald McClellan. Look at the state that he is in. That's what happens if a fighter fights for too long, or fights in a situation whereby I mean, I saw a Ring editorial on this, and they took a very level-headed approach, and they said boxing is sport, it's not a war. And yes, it's a tough sport, but as much as I like it, I would never ever ever want to see a fight where a man gets permanently disabled or dies. And I honestly think some fans become so desensitized that they don't seem to care if that happens. I mean, ask yourself a question honestly. Do you want to sit there at the side of a ring and see a man die? A young man with the rest of his life ahead of him. That's just fucked up, if that's what you want to see. Now, I don't blame you if you want to see an action-packed fight. Hell yeah, I do as well. You know, that's what makes the sport interesting, is what makes it compelling. But you have to have a certain line whereby, in my opinion, a professional boxer, if they quit, there is a very legitimate reason in their mindset for that. And it's got nothing to do with having no heart. It's got everything to do with having common sense. And I really, really think that if this sport is to be legitimate in the 21st century, then everyone from promoters to boxing journalists and to fans need to have some sort of line where they don't cross, where they don't get sadistic, and other fighters for that matter. So it really bothers me when I see comments like such and such fighter is a bum, such and such fighter is a card, such and such fighter has no heart. If you are a boxer and you've been in the ring, then you might be in a position to say that, because at least you've experienced it. But if you're a fan who's never been in the ring, then what the hell gives you a right to sit behind the comfort of a computer screen and badmouth a man who has done that? That's just fucked up to me. I mean, you know, you can call me names. I'm not putting on any pretense out here. I'm an amateur fighter. I'm not on the level of these guys. I'm not making myself out to be something that I'm not. And it's just really fucked up that some people don't seem to have any sort of understanding that when a fighter like that quits, there must be a very legitimate reason for doing it. Now, there may, to play the devil's advocate for a second, there may be fights whereby a fighter quits because he wants a payday, and that's not good. That's greedy, and it's not professional. But more often than not, I would say that when a fighter quits, it's because he or she genuinely fears for their health. And there's nothing honourable about winning a title if you're going to be disabled for the rest of your life. That's just stupid. A title, in any sport for that matter, is not worth a lifelong disability. Because think about it, you can't even enjoy it. You can't enjoy the glory that comes from that title if, for example, you're blinded or you're permanently in a wheelchair or whatever. So I really, really wish fans would have a bit more... When I say compassion, I don't mean being too sensitive. By all means, this is a tough sport. I do not expect fans to sort of treat fighters like... you know, it's not like other sports. It's not like tennis or something like that. It's a tough sport. And every fighter should absolutely put his all into it. I've no problem with that. And I've no problem with fans expecting that. But I do have a problem with sadism. I really do. And it's nothing new in this sport. I mean, going back to the 30s, there used to be a nickname for guys who faced Joe Louis, the Bum of the Month Club. It's bullshit. I mean, I would honestly argue there are no bums in boxing. It's just a very crude, very disrespectful term. And anyone who values the sport shouldn't use that term. Professional boxing journalists should never use it. Fighters shouldn't use it against other fighters. And fans shouldn't use it. If you dislike a guy, fine. You don't have to like everyone in sport. There's boxers I don't like. And you can make legitimate arguments about their techniques or their personality or whatever. But at least acknowledge the basics that are involved in this sport, which every fighter has to have stepping into that ring. And the fact that he steps between the ropes in the first place shows that he has some basic things like courage, and that he's got to a level whereby he's trained to do that. So I just wish there was more respect from the fan base, and it really pisses me off to see this. And maybe you could say I'm too sensitive. I don't know anything about boxing. Say what you want, but I've been following this sport for years, and I wouldn't follow it if there wasn't things I liked about it. Hell, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't like it. I wouldn't be going into a ring in October if I hate this sport. But from a fan base, I just wish people could be more respectful. Because in the end of the day, these people risk life and limb for entertainment. Especially at that level. And it's just ridiculous to expect a man to die for your entertainment. The price of a boxing ticket does not equate to a man's life. It just doesn't. You can make as many excuses as you want about all the professional boxers, they should do this, they should do that. What they should do is give their all. What they should do is respect their opponent, respect the fans. But that doesn't mean that they should have to take unnecessary risks. One of the rules of boxing is protect yourself at all times. Now, if a fighter feels that he can no longer efficiently protect himself, he is actually playing by the book. He is going by the rules in calling it quits, and most referees would probably go along with that. Now, the corner might not be happy, the opponent might not be happy, the crowd might not be happy. That is an incredibly lonely decision the fighter makes, but sometimes it is the best decision. Now, to be fair, isn't it? I know there's other fans out there like me who can see common sense and understand that sometimes this is necessary. Now, I could understand the frustration and the controversy if every fighter always done this, because then fans would think, what are we paying money for? But when a fighter does it, I think more often than not there's a legitimate reason for it. I mean, I'm honest, if I was in a situation where I thought that I was going to get seriously injured, I would stay on the canvas, or I would not get out of my corner. Now call me a coward if you want, but I want to do things in my life. I want to get married, I want to do things in my life, and I suspect that there's boxers out there who do want to do other things in their life. You know, when you consider a boxer on average retires in his sort of early 40s, that's only, you know, when you consider life expectancy is 80, that means he has the rest of his life ahead of him. So why should he risk that for one moment of putting on a brave front? It's so stupid. And I really wish more fans would just try and respect this. It's not about not having heart, it's about common sense. Sorry for the long video, but I really think it's important to make all those points.